good evening, good day. Depending on which part of the world you are, a very, very warm welcome to the Rise World Summit 10th edition. Yes, you heard that right. We're doing this for the past 10 years, and we're really pleased with this momentous milestone for our peak world community. As you know, the Rise World Summit is focused on collaborations and is a very special way organizes these different sessions, including the roundtables, to enhance and bring together thought leaders who will share their insights with us and take us through deeper issues to understand how do we create a better world and a better planet. In this roundtable, and this is a signature roundtable at the Rise World Summit, and part 2 of the value co-creation framework by Rise and iDobro. And so it's really particularly of pride for us to really take this forward in the second part, which we did on 31st was the first part, and now of course we're doing the second part. To give a very brief context to the roundtable before we get started is two things. One is we don't really have panels or presentations at the Rise World Summit, and therefore there is no particular Q&A, right? We are here to learn from each other, to know and exchange. So please feel free to come in as and when you'd like to talk. Also, I would encourage our audience members to also please keep using the chat box and post your questions there. We are very eager to look at it. And the way the flow is going to be is we start with challenges, we talk about capabilities, and finally collaborations. And the reason is very simple, right? We want to make sure that we are solving problems. We want to make sure that we are meeting the needs of those who are right now in this call. And more than anything else, we want to ensure that we finally have collaboration. So while we will start as inorganically as possible, we hope that we'll be able to take the conversation towards some outcomes or possible follow-ups post this summit as well. Because it doesn't end just here. This is not just about one roundtable. This is about a community that is alive round the year as well. So we are looking forward to making that happen. And the context for today's roundtable and this particular one is about business, right? And how do we co-create value with the ecosystem so that business thrives and society also thrives, so that we coexist, co-create, and make sure that there is prosperity for all. And how do you do that? That only happens when each of us are driven by certain values. And so before we, again, go deeper into it, I think I just want to point out how the part 1 and part 2 kind of work together. We say that every organization, no matter what size, what sector, what location, all of them, right, have got certain processes and they have certain operations that they look at and stakeholders. So therefore, if you look at it as two parts, one part is people and the other part is capital. And so in part 1, we spoke about the power of people, right? The power of people that leads you to really design and make better policies to attract better people to your ecosystem and therefore lead to better partnerships. But on the other hand, we are also saying that all businesses have got capital. Unfortunately, we always equate capital with only finance, right? And while we will be discussing financial capital, there are many different forms of capital, starting with people, human capital, social capital, natural capital, and then financial capital. How we connect those dots will go a long way in really co-creating value for the ecosystem and for a business to thrive. So in part 2, we are going to explore how does business predominantly, but all organizations, leverage their capital so that they can use it to create value for themselves and for the ecosystem, because how they use their money and where they put their money is going to determine both their own operational sustainability as well as the long-term sustainability of the world as a whole. And so, with that context, I am going to start opening and asking my experts who are here with me on the table to please give a very quick, short self introduction, just your name, your designation, your organization, and of course, one maybe word or phrase that describes why are you on this table, whether from an interest point of view or the work point of view. Yeah. And as I said, this is not a Q&A, so there's no special sequence or anything. Please just jump in and come. Just unmute yourself so that we know you're going to speak to have you go ahead. Please, over to you.
So, should I start?
Sure, go ahead.
Okay. So, this is to everybody and to the delegates who are joined the session. First and foremost, Karen and I think we go for quite some time together in some panels. So that's the first part I want to say. Thanks, Karen, to call me here. And the subject, the reason I am here is the subject is something very close to my heart. I am practicing this. And I am Sandeep Goswami. I run a firm called Sandeep Goswami Associates, and we are into sustainability in architectural design and in the building and in a smart city space. And I understand that this is where we should start with, because as a member of the Global Compact, United Nations Global Compact, we are looking at SDGs, and inclusive capital procurement and practices are something which is the lifeblood of SDGs, and that can only succeed when we talk about capital, because it starts from there. Thank you so much.
Hi all, I'm Richa, founder of Harmony Inc. We are a sustainability and CSR advisory firm. Basically, we guide mid-sized companies to start their both sustainability and CSR journeys. This is a very interesting panel, and I thank Karen and her team for curating such interesting panel with regards to inclusive capital and supply chains, because that's something which we see in industry, picking the momentum. And we try and advise them how to kind of, build a bridge between social enterprises and India Inc. and make them like partners, which is, I think, one of the aims of RISE also, which is collaboration and working in partnership when it comes to sustainability. Thank you. Look forward to this discussion.
Good afternoon to all of you. And thank you, Karen, for lucidly setting the context. Sandeep, namaste to you too. It's nice to have people like Richa, and I'm sure I'll hear the rest of them. My name is Hari Haran. I'm here among many roles that I play. One is that of being the vice president for something called the Forum of Critical Utilities Services. Essentially, I'm also part of the IGBC. We are seeing Karthik here. I'm part of a few other organizations enabling essentially each of these industry associations to infuse this element of solutioning sustainability among their members. So how do we therefore look at the vision charter of each of these associations and bring this dimension of green into all of these things is one of the things that we do. The other is, if you look at any building, you have today a building stock in India of 180 billion square feet. IGBC, and Karthik is here, I don't want to steal thunder from him, has achieved 10 billion square feet or so. And we have therefore only about 5%, shall we say, of the entire stock of buildings in the country. The focus should therefore be, to my mind, on retrofits for existing buildings, largely in the commercial sector first and then in the residential sector. I'll stop here now and maybe pick up the threads as the conversation flows.
Maybe I can go next. Hi, everyone. This is Eroshan Alagaratnam. I'm working as a regional director for South Asia at WeConnect International. WeConnect International is a global not-for-profit organization that supports the women-owned businesses to register and learn more about how to do business with their corporations while working with the corporations to educate on the importance of inclusive procurement and ESG aspects. And we provide a platform for women-owned businesses and corporates to meet and join together and do business together. So, yeah, that's all for now, and I'll come back in the later. Thanks.
Okay, maybe I can go next. Hello, everyone. Good morning, good afternoon. This is Asad. I'm from Malaysia, and I'm speaking from a school of business. It's called Asia School of Business. I'm also the director for Sustainability Supply Chain Center here that I manage, primarily dedicated to the small farmers, and the context is oil palm. So my primary interest is definitely in the area of responsible sourcing, sustainable supply chain management. That's what I teach. That's what I work with. So when I saw the framework, the value creation framework, which Krutika shared with me, and thank you, Karen, for passing it, I can connect with it. I can connect in the sense that so much of that we do, but we don't have a narrative of how to put things in place. We ourselves have been through a very messy journey to put this, whatever you want to call it, SDG, ESG, or now, this framework. So it was interesting, and plus sustainable sourcing, it aligns with procurement and practice, which are the two central themes here. So I just felt it was very well placed. So thank you very much for the opportunity, and I look forward to an interesting conversation ahead. Thank you.
Okay, great. I think next I will introduce myself. Very good morning to you all. I am Karthikeyan. I am part of the Indian Green Building Council. And we have been promoting the green building concepts over 2 decades now. And of course, we have also reached some significant milestone. Our chairman, Dr. Hariharan, has mentioned about this. Yes, we have crossed, we are very close to this 10 billion square feet of the green building footprint. So in this process, when I looked at this, the concept of inclusive capital and procurement and practices, yes, this is something very, very important from the green building concepts as well. In terms of sourcing of the materials, we have also started working on in terms of how the construction companies, the developers, and the architects can look at the products and materials and source them responsibly. So in this process, we have also initiated an activity related to labeling of the products which are green. So I will share those ideas and then our thoughts in terms of how to take this forward as part of this conversation. Thank you.
Yeah, hello. I'm Meena Galiara. I'm from the School of Business Management, Narsi Monji Institute of Management Studies. I head the Jasani Center for Social Entrepreneurship and Sustainability Management. Basically, being a teacher, I would like to know from the practitioners how they have been executing this journey of inclusive capital and sustainable procurement and supplier diversity, which we discuss in the class, because talking in the class is different and actually doing things in practice is different. So I'm here more to learn from the practitioners so that we can adjust our course curriculum and we can sensitize our students more and help them to understand the sphere 2 and sphere 3 of supplier diversity, why it matters and what is its relevance. Thank you.
Hi, good morning. This is Percy Ghaswala, the founder trustee of the Ghaswala Vision Foundation. And yeah, we don't work in the education and actual capital space, but we work in the space of healthcare. And our belief is that there is a lot of spare capacity, which is prevalent in every hospital with every one of us. And we can do our little bit, whatever little bit we can. So we can include whatever capital we can and procure whatever is there and practice it. So yes, we work in the states of Maharashtra and Bihar. We restore vision to the abandoned poor, and we have a volunteer-based system. We are all volunteers for the past 20 years with an admin cost of just about 5%. All the expenses, all the funding goes towards restoring vision and transforming lives. So happy to be here. Hi Karen, hi Meena, hi Sandeep, a couple of people who have chatted with or known for a long time.
Great. Self-introductions work best because then there's no question about me missing someone. So thank you all very much for joining. What a stellar and a diverse set of people on my panel. I'm really pleased to have it because we have got a practitioner, we have got academicians, we have got civil society, we have got associations, and then of course we've got entrepreneurs, and we've got all from different parts of the world as well, right? From WeConnect that's based in the US to, of course, Eroshan being in Sri Lanka to, of course, assistant professor being Asad being in Malaysia. So we've covered literally the entire globe, right? Right from the west to the east. So to get very quickly, I'm going to pick on what Professor Asad spoke about, that it's very confusing. I think that's the biggest challenge, right? If I have to start talking about challenges, that's the number one challenge. Today, it's an alphabet soup out there, ESG, SDGs, CSR, D&I. What are we supposed to be focusing on? I mean, corporates are just losing it. It's like, are we going to do this compliance bit or are we going to, make economic value, right? So really, that's why the Rise Value Co-Creation Framework really talks about moving from compliance to commitment. And so for me, that's the biggest challenge that we really want to do. How can we create a narrative? And that's the right word used. How do we create a narrative that any manager at any level in an organization understands why is it important for them to look at how business is going to co-create value for society, but also ensuring that they themselves have a business case to do so. And it's really difficult. I mean, I look at all the literature out there. There are minimum 5 to 8 pages to explain these, 4 or 5 things that we've put in the class. So yeah, please, I would really request anyone who wants to come in and talk about what are the challenges that you see, when you're talking about value co-creation and the use of capital for more sustainable practices. Please come.
Yeah, Karen, I will start off, if I may, with permission from Hariji. Meenaji, I know you, but we have met only briefly. I do have spoken in your college in the architectural division on sustainability many times. Coming back to what I'm saying, you see, if you have read the Moody's report, which came out, it talked about that any deviation from the Paris Agreement would entail a higher loan loss for banks. Understanding the fundamental is that people are talking about even in a disorderly climate scenario, credit losses could be about 3.5% in total. I mean, that's a huge thing, and as banks are moving to less carbon intensive exposures in their lending, but differences remain. And that is where you're talking about this soup of the materiality concept that comes into ESG. But why this thing is not really taking off, what the challenges are? The challenges are that when we are looking at the common people, see, when you look at polity, we all groups like and say that, okay, who are the people who should take the lead? And we talk about governance, and we talk about, and the ESG, we talk about the governance and the government and the policies. But policies can be made only when the common people are wanting that policy and they understand what climate change is, and that how that is going to really impact their livelihood, the business. Not many people really stop to think that about 97% of your daily life consumption of whatever you're looking at, even if you look at your room, 97% of the products are either extracted or it has been cultivated, or something which has come from the planet itself. They are natural resources. I mean, you can't even build a building without those natural resources today. You can't have a furniture or furnishing without natural resources. So everything is natural resources, and that is the tipping point. The tipping point has to be understood. And what we see is, when we are talking about people who are in the policy making decision level, they are not. I've been talking about this for quite some time in the World Economic Forum. Also, I spoke about it, that when you look at an MBA, the guy has done MBA finance, he has no clue about biodiversity. And when we are talking about even creating, now that the good things are there, that we are talking about independent directors and a woman director should come in and all those things, but there is no clarity that, okay, their one director should be somebody who's coming from a background of biodiversity and climate change. Somebody who can explain the real serious challenges. Otherwise, you'll keep on having a Pittorgarh or a Joshimath. These things keep on happening, and there is a financial loss. Now, how do you?
Yeah, I think what you're pointing out is that, we really need to create a lot more awareness. People are just not understanding the connect. It's a very abstract notion in terms of sustainability.
Yeah, the common man doesn't understand it. Yeah, that was ground up. It has to happen groundwork, and where you actually talk about the value, that this is the money loss you will have in monetary and in your health.
Absolutely.
And once the 30 seconds of your time, in 2022 April, I lost somebody very dear. And when I looked at why the person died through such a painful death, and I looked at our own satellites, because we are the only probable architects with satellites to do preventive, we take 5 to 50 years ahead in the future, what would happen to a particular piece of land, 100 square meters also. So that's how we start our design. And what I saw was that in that particular city, carbon dioxide, nitrous oxide, PM 2.5 was so high that there was nothing. Even if we had put her in a ventilator and everything inside the hospital, the outside air was so polluting that there was no other chance for a chronic bronchitis patient to survive.
Right. And that's a very important thing that you've connected, that you don't realize that our environment is not just about the physical environment. How are we going to survive, right? How are we going to function? Companies have people who are employed, who need to be in the pink of health to be able to be productive. And all these are interlinked. And these interlinkages is what people are not really understanding, because we're looking at things really from a very, very, very narrow lens for everything that we're taking decisions on how to use our money and where to put that money. So thank you, Sandeep, for bringing up both the human element and, of course, the business environment in which we have to survive in. Great. Thank you. Anybody else would like to come in? I can see Karthikeyan already unmuted, and Richa, will come to you after that. Yeah? Great.
Okay, I have been unmuted for quite some time, Karan.
Okay.
Thank
Then
you.
I'll ask
But
Richa.
that's fine.
Yeah.
But let me share my thoughts.
Sure.
I agree with him. There is a lot need to be done from the point of view of addressing the environment, at the same time addressing the health and well-being of the individuals as well. Because ultimately, if you look at from the building point of view, the building is meant for the humans who are occupying it. So the health and well-being need to be taken care. So if you want to take care of the health and well-being, yes, the design has got a lot of role to play. As an architect, he has also articulated how he can work on it. The second thing is in terms of the selection of products and materials, the procurement part. There need to be a lot of focus in terms of both from the design point of view as well as from the procurement point of view, to address both the environment as well as the health and well-being of the occupants. So we can go deeper into this as we move forward, but this is the statement I would like to make. When you are working on the buildings, yes, design is important. At the same time, the procurement is also important in terms of the selection of products and materials for addressing both environment as well as health and well-being. Yeah.
Very true. And don't wait for me to also come in. I will only come in if there is a requirement. But Richa, because I know you're already waiting to speak, I'm not going to spend time. Please go ahead.
Great. No, I think very valid points made by both the panelists. There is definitely a gap when it comes to, education and sustainability education within the academia for sure. So that, you have the youth who have the right kind of mindsets. And I think Dr. Galleria and Asad are working in the right direction to kind of build sustainability right into their mindsets when they are kind of learning on MBA, other aspects. So I'll share a bit from industry experience, because we deal with the corporates, both mid-size and the bigger ones. Just to share a bit with, since we're talking about the theory and the praxis difference. Now, the thing practically is, when you talk to bigger corporates, they are doing it a wee bit extra. Okay, so they have gone beyond compliance. I mean, the corporates like Tatas and Godrej's and Mahindras of the world, they do a bit extra because their management has already been sensitized, or they're already proactive into it. But when it comes to their supply chain partners, the mid-sized companies, it's typically they do sustainability initiatives only when there's a mandate coming or there's a compliance coming from their customers. So that's a struggle. So what happens is when we talk to the mid-sized corporates, they say that, okay, we are doing it because there's a mandate coming from our OEMs, and so we need to do it. But can somebody guide us how to go about it? So that's a challenge space. One, which is lack of knowledge and handholding for the mid-sized corporates to doing sustainability initiatives. It could be environment, it could be diversity, incorporating diversity, equity, and inclusion into their criteria. It could be, environment, health, and safety practices that you were talking about. Any aspects. So one is that, which is lack of knowledge and skills. Second, they don't even have finance for that. And that's what, we at Harmony Inc. have been propagating, that how can we look at sustainable finance for these mid-sized corporates? I mean, the budget says right now that they are supporting SMEs and MSMEs, but I think more and more financing is required, and possibly the green finance that is the kind of emphasis which is coming out in this budget will help these corporates to pick up sustainability practices. But we also feel that the OEMs and the customers who are asking for these mid-sized corporates to take up initiatives because they have a mandate from investors, they need to handhold them with regards to coming to a transferring of knowledge, and also with regards to building the financial capital of these firms. So that's a struggle right now for the value chain companies when it comes to practicing even sustainability for their value chain, right from the mid-size to tier 1 to tier 3 suppliers. Now, when it comes to kind of within the bigger corporates, you rightly mentioned, Karen, there's this vocabulary confusion when it comes to, especially, and when it comes to frameworks, should we go for GRI, should we go for SASB, should we go for Value Reporting Foundation, which is the combined one. So right now the bigger companies are looking at the ratings. So everybody whom we interact with, they want us to kind of, or similar kind of experts to look at how we can up our ratings, to make it, if it is a D in a CDP, can we make it a C or a B plus? If it is a B plus, can we make it an A? So right now, and maybe Dr. Galeria and Asad, when you kind of talk to students and who are passing our industry, the first thing that sustainability, if they get in a team, is how to get our, ratings up if they are in the bigger corporates. Then obviously reporting is something which has gone, I think tremendous focus has happened within the last 2 years on the ESG and sustainability reporting. I mean, we've seen it over the last 2 decades growing, but last 2 years, suddenly it has been leapfrogged. So sustainability reporting ratings are extremely critical. When it comes to initiatives, again, the mid-sized corporates or relatively higher-sized corporates are looking at low-hanging fruits. Even if there's a pressure coming from bigger ones, they would want to do something which is cost-effective, but yet fulfilling the criteria. So I'll leave with these 3 pointers, what the industry is right now experiencing, both in terms of the bigger ones who are actually doing it and spending that extra bit, and their value chain companies who are facing the struggle on these 3-4 parameters.
Absolutely. I think using the right word, from value chain to value-based leadership, I think it all revolves around, because value creation is not just economic value. As you said, there are multiple aspects to it, and that's really the key to it. We have 2 brilliant academicians over here. Meena, especially, I have worked with her, and I know, the way her students just revere her, absolutely. So I think if either Meena or Asad want to come in to bring in that academic point of view, would be really great on the challenges, and then of course go to the supply chain itself, which is where Eroshan would really be able to help, and maybe Haryana. So yeah, please come in.
Yeah, in my opinion, let me hear Asad first, because I think he's doing some awesome work in the area of supply chain. And then I can give you my candid opinions, which can be very, at times, because there are industry practitioners sitting, so I have to watch my words. And I'm still having the hangover of Adani pulling back his FPO. So, okay. Okay.
I tell you, yeah. See, this is why we don't have a Q&A. This makes it really, really, organic and engaging. So yes, Asad, over to you, please.
Okay. So thank you, Dr. Meena, for putting me on spot. And thank you, Richa, for summing it up in the sense of some of the challenges so you mentioned lack of knowledge, skills, lack of finance. Yeah, agreed on all of that, from mid-size to smaller. And then talking about the challenges from the smaller companies to the bigger ones, bigger companies looking at rating, sustainability reporting becoming important. Yeah, all of that is valid. But how to put it, in the sense that I've been fortunate enough to work with the applied arm of so we are a center here, which it is mother center is based at MIT in Cambridge, and it focuses more on applied work. So I've been fortunate enough, so being in Malaysia, that's how the center was established, to work mostly with the industry. So while we teach in an MBA program, but most of the programs are driven to work with the industry. So if opportunity permits, I will give examples of one of the centers that I run. We work with about 8,000 small farmers, okay, all based on oil palm. And oil palm is always like a controversial commodity, very much in the spot. India's getting into it, so let's see how we do that. But before we get a little bit deeper into the discussion, one of the key things I would say, well, what if we had all the knowledge and skills? But what if we had the finance? Even if we had all of those things, is it enough for us to move on? Let's say sustainability ratings do not matter so much, or we got one golden standard that kind of everyone has now found peace with. So in my experience with the industry a little bit, I think motivation, right? That is also one of the key drivers. And again, that's where what I liked about the overall theme when we use the word for the framework, value-driven approach or value creation or co-creation. So in the beginning, we talk about compliance versus commitment, right? So I think that's where I'm going with when I say motivation. So we know when we talk about compliance, it's something which is driven by fear of negativity. If I don't do, I'll be punished. Whereas commitment is something that you believe in it. So how do we get to that level? And then it goes to different levels. So I think that is, in a bird's eye view, is where if we can have that perspective, then everything else could fall into place. And there is a long way to go. Should there be more regulation? Should there be, how you drive it? You drive it with sustainability report ratings, etc., etc. So how can we have, that's where the fourth point comes in, which is how can we have that ecosystem that kind of facilitates it all? So when I see all of the framework, I will say easier said than done, okay? But we also have to put a little bit retrospective perspective to that, we were once upon a time doing things good for good, like a barter system. Today we do good for money, right? So when we talk about value co-creation, we talk about customers and suppliers and partners and buyers. They're all being actors, working together. So that whole notion of goods and services and money, it has to change also in the process. So for example, the case studies that I teach, an example is one of the companies called Patagonia. It's a very interesting company. They're doing good in the field of sustainability, but again, they teach how not to throw away their clothes, how to buy less of their clothes, how to reuse their clothes, and how to give it back. So it kind of works against the business model. But again, in the first pass of things, the first line, which you have your model, policy, and consumers. You say if you have responsible or ethical, positive policies, you get the value of responsibility, and you get these consumers back. So you're getting these consumers back, but these are the better consumers. So this is your internal gain. External gain is you are driving away from that consumer-driven or consumption-driven society. So that way I was saying, so I like the framework, the way it is. I wish we could have more coverage on it so we can teach it. But again, as I say, better said than done. I would also like to see some case studies, some examples of where we can actually see what works, what doesn't work. Okay. So that's where I will stop for now. Great. So I said motivation, and motivation, I'm giving an example where it is ingrained, and then somehow they're able to get loyal customers back, gain internally, but also give it back to the system. And I can share later on from my project and examples and what we do in the class.
Wow, I can't be more grateful. I think you've really spent time on the framework, and you really do understand it, the nuances of that framework, and what we really want to get from it. And yes, we do want to make it into a teaching tool. We are creating a toolkit around it. So we'll talk more about it in the collaboration piece and the capability piece. But I do want to still continue on the challenges just for a little bit more before we move that. But absolutely my grateful thanks for the time you're spending on that framework. Yeah. Anybody else like to come in? Please feel free to come in on some more challenges to creating or co-creating value in ecosystems.
Yeah, I think I can come in now. So I can actually expand on what Richa said and Richa and Asad said. They really touched on the core issue of the supply chain, as well as the core value creations in the environment and sustainability aspects. Actually, when you talk about the mid-size and the large medium companies, the large size companies always they have a clear procurement policies that supports at least for a certain percentage of diverse suppliers, knowingly or unknowingly, right? So it is not that they are intentionally doing, but at the process they are implementing their procurement process, they also give opportunities for women-owned business and the disabled-owned and the other diverse suppliers. But the some of the largest companies, they develop the the supply development diversity and inclusion process and policies within the organization, and they practice as a culture, right? So which put them in a pathway to spend so much money on the percentage of the procurement spend on the diverse suppliers, which in turn have a rippling effect in the community, right? So that is why those companies taking supply diversity as a low-hanging fruits in terms of their achieving their ESG goals, right? But this is what globally happening. And when you talk about South Asia, India is actually as a subcontinent, so they are leading player in terms of developing a culture of supply diversity in the companies, as well as leading in the thought process of how women economic empowerment and the empowering the diverse suppliers can happen, and how the procurement process and the value chain can be inclusive to give equal opportunities for these all diverse suppliers and groups. If you take the medium-sized enterprises, they actually suffer a lot in terms of their lack of staffing, and because people are doing wearing multiple hats in the organization and always confusing, and in terms of roles and responsibilities when it's come to procurement. So who will take the responsibilities of taking the supply diversity process in their procurement approach is the question. But increasingly, we have seen in the last 1 year, the medium-sized companies also started to learn about the benefits of supply diversity and how they can give back to the society through a proper business process. Say, for an example, the companies like Zomato, right? So they have recently shown interest to join WeConnect International as a member with the commitment to source from women-owned businesses. It is not just normally happening, but it's also WeConnect and the other organizations, and as well as the ecosystem partners, put a lot of awareness and efforts to share this the benefit of, or the business case of diversifying their supply chain into these large and medium and small size companies. The COVID-19 challenge have already put a lot of pressure on the large companies and medium-sized companies to make sure their supply chain is resilient. If they're just sourcing from one part of the world and one group of people, it's always a threat for their business. How they can sustain their business by diversifying the supply chain, and how they can make their business resilient, it was a question for them. It was put as a larger question for them during the COVID-19. And now most of the largest companies and mid-sized companies have started to practice the supply diversity process in the organization and started to enjoy the benefits of that. So I'll stop it now, and then I'll take more examples when it comes to the practical cases.
With leveraging capital or looking at procurement is making sure that there is a diversity in the supply chain, and very often that's the last consideration actually in terms of utilization of capital, in terms of building capacity of women entrepreneurs be part of it. So that's a huge challenge, no doubt about it. Thank you very much for sharing that with us. Great. Meena, you think you're ready to go?
Yeah, sure. Yeah,
great.
Yeah, thank you so much, for sharing your thoughts, because it does help us to understand what is happening at the ground level. Now, I'll be very candid that there are two things. One is transaction and the other one is transformation. So many a times the boards talk about transformation, but they end up doing the transaction part of it, because at the end of the day, they want to have that economic profit to be in place, especially if they are, public limited companies or family enterprises. And so we, as of today, we are jumbling with a lot of words which started from philanthropy to strategic philanthropy to CSR to sustainability and to ESG. So there's a whole lot of messy things that are going on over there. So it is in class, as we normally say कि नीति और नियत ये दो चीजें बहुत मायने रखती है. Okay, अगर नियत खराब होगी तो नीति कभी अच्छी नहीं हो सकती है. So that is at the end of it. So if I do a lot of disclosures or whatever the compliance part of it is there, I tick in the box, I do a lot of things, but I really do not show that on ground. That is very difficult because that will show up after a few years. It's not going to be, you may have a short-term gain, but you may not have a long-term gain. And so, as what Professor Asad said, having case studies. So we use the Ferrero case, or we use the Alibaba case, or we use different cases, but also case has a shelf life, and there is completely different things happening. Okay, in that. So if I use an HUL case, I also have issues related to mercury dumping. Okay, so it is, so you may have a best case to showcase that how inclusive capital and procurement is there. So it is a tightrope walk, and people who come to B schools come with 2 to 3 years of experience. They have a lot of information at their hand. They know that, okay, whatever we are talking at the end of the day, share value and shared value are two different things, and they cannot be, in practical terms, always be possible for all businesses to create the shared value. And so whether the whole dilemma is on whether share value or shared value and how much. So the point is that when we talking about inclusive capital and procurement practices and those things, if we can, if I'm working with SHGs and I'm talking about circular economy, my SHGs teach me a lot more, because how to reuse the clothes, how to recycle, how are these things. So definitely companies have a lot to learn from the local communities, their indigenous practices, and can create that diversity, because a lot of learning takes place in that way, whether it is waste management, whether it is, even getting into developing procurement practices. So the interesting case that I can talk about is the Taj group of hotels working with ARZ, Anyay Rahit, Anyay Virodhi Zindagi, which works with sex workers to design laundromats to rehabilitate sex workers, and giving businesses, okay, of washing the linen, washing curtains, everything to that NGO. So that is actually creating a very sustainable practice, that you're rehabilitating the sex workers, you're teaching them how to run a laundry business, you're also taking them as part of your supply chain after developing their capacities. So a lot of things that in a corporate world, what happens is that, yes, I agree that on your board, there should be somebody who can show you the mirror and can tell you, okay, what is the sustainability part of it, what is the risk associated with practicing sustainability itself, because a lot of you'll have to now find out suppliers who understand your language, you have to invest in capacity building, but nevertheless in the long run it helps you. It definitely helps you. You have to invest a lot of time in capacity building of your own people and capacity building of your partners which are there. Ultimately, planet belongs to all of us, and it is not just only for the corporates or other things. You have certain, when we talk about SDGs, the whole dilemma around SDG 12, which is responsible production and consumption. In the class, we often face challenges that if you're saying consumption kam karo, and you have companies coming up with so many campaigns, okay, so many things, like you have finance companies giving you loans for practically getting married, to going on a honeymoon, to purchasing cars, purchasing houses, and then sending an agent to recover, and then human rights violation. So it is a wicked problem. It's actually a wicked problem. And so these are the things which we have to bring in the class and tell them there is the world is still evolving. Though we may be technologically advanced, technology itself cannot create sustainable practices at all times. Let's say, for example, the drones. Drones were brought in order to see that people can get medicines on time, to ease that life, but drones are also used for wars. So you understand, you're bringing robots to the market, you're doing those things, you're bringing, something software like Chat GPT. It has advantages and disadvantages, but the academic world is really worried कि अभी हम assignment किस type की दे, other than getting them to the live projects that you go to the field and do that. Thanks to COVID, people don't want to go out, okay, for academic purposes. Party के लिए सब लोग जाना चाहते हैं, especially urban areas. But if you tell them go to the slum to help this enterprise, which is a startup, we are working with adolescent entrepreneurs. We want to bring them into the value chain, because the earlier we bring more entrepreneurs, it is better for us. So the challenges of the academic world are that what we talk in the class becomes an oxymoron. Okay, I'm teaching corporate governance, and here I have the the live thing that is happening. I don't know today afternoon 3 o'clock what I'm going to talk to my class. Okay, about that. Okay, follow these. So there are practically things which are happening contrary to what I'm trying to tell, and so I feel almost sitting on that edge of whether I should be talking or what I should learn from this whole aspect of corporate governance, especially sustainability related things. We are evolving, regulation is evolving, everybody is evolving. But I believe that if people who are sitting on the board are not necessarily involved, only the main actors in corporate governance. There are rating agencies. Okay, rating agencies can move up many things. So I do not necessarily hold the independent directors responsible. There are many players outside. Okay, independent director बेचारा क्या करेगा? Okay, so he has two options, either to move out or to do. But outside the board, there are many players, many players who are goofing up a lot of things which are there. And so this sustainability agenda, it has to be part of your business strategy and not a B plan. अगर strategy है, B plan and strategy are two different things. अगर वो strategy बनती है तो फिर then you will talk that language. But as you see, manufacturing organizations are adopting it far more faster, because if it gives them this whole thing about cost reduction, better pricing opportunities, better ways of differentiating, meeting the competitive things, then definitely it will work. But the same formula may not work for everyone. Now again, ESG, if you see, you have number of companies, itne sare frameworks hai. So there is no one framework. So I will decide, because ESG comes with metrics. I will decide what my metric is. So it is like I stitch my clothes according to my body size. So in the absence of any uniform metrics which is there, it is very difficult. But I think we are evolving. We have no choice. We have no choice but to evolve. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you so much, Meena. And you said you'd be candid, and you lived up to that for sure. I mean, literally, admitting that what we teach in class and what really happens on the ground are so different that you have very little control to ensure that you have the kind of outcomes you want for your students to really change their mindset so that they can be those responsible leaders or value-based leaders, in the economy itself, right? I'm going to, maybe shift gears a little bit to start moving from the challenges to capabilities, because I want to touch on some of the things that you have already actually hinted that could be some of the things. One is, of course, what Meena said, that, shared value and share value are very different. And in fact, we used to say this line all the time at the Rise World Summit, especially because it is based on the 4 values, right? That it is the values we share that help us create shared value, right? It's only when we share our own value systems that we can actually do things together. And that is why I've also moved away from the shared value term, because as you rightly said, it connotes a whole economic, base only to that, right? Whereas the reality is that value can be created in so many ways and does not necessarily mean only financial or economic. And as we spoke about capital also earlier, and that's why we're using the word value co-creation. The other thing you also spoke about was, of course, about the SDGs. And here again, instead of looking at SDGs as these 17 silos, what we want to encourage again through the Rise World Summit and our work posted is that The SDGs are actually 17 different colors of wool that are tightly bound in a woolen ball, they're tightly interlinked. And that's what we need to realize. That's how we need to really look at solutions, and designing new innovations will come from those insights rather than as individual, right? The last is in terms of the framework. When you said about KPIs, I think right now the framework that we have created is really not prescriptive. Yeah, it is contextual, which means we are giving you the broad framework to understand why you should do this. We are answering the why part of it, or the purpose part of it, right? The how part is going to be up to you to design based on what you feel is the most applicable. And as I said, once we work on the toolkit, we'll obviously be able to help explain this even better and do more around it. But in anything that you start with, as Simon Sinek says in his video, you have to start with your why. And I think that's something we also believe in, but we changed a little bit of what he talks about. Instead of talking about why, how, and what, we look at it as why, what, and how. And that is that, why are we doing this? What can we achieve by doing this? And then decide. It is a big problem, as you rightly said, because there are so many frameworks, there are so many KPIs, so many metrics. But I think that's where we start helping them to contextualize it. So I'm going to ask, Hariharan or Katkin and Percy to maybe come in, because how people are using their money, whether it is to meet ESG norms, whether it is to create more sustainable buildings, or whether it is to use it in CSR. And D&I, of course, as I said, all the three elements, money is going into it. How is that benefiting them and society at the same time? And how will you justify, especially when you talk about green buildings, green practices, how do you justify? Because Meena hinted again over there that when you invest into sustainable practices, you're actually building capacity for yourself in the long term. And that's exactly what the framework talks about, right? Sustainable practices leads to sustainable capacity. So I don't know, like I said, jump in, whoever.
Karen, before you decide, and I prefer remaining a fly on the wall. I don't mind that. But having heard all these guys, if you want me to, as part of that setting of context, speak a little on what you guys need to be doing, or what all of us have to be doing. And I know the, shall we say, the professional hazards of anchoring and doing it half the time, and I forget that there are other people who need to speak sometimes. All right. RISE is seeking, like many of us here, and all of us are discerning professionals, whether you are from academia, or industry, or your researchers, whoever you are, that one, challenge of creating, like you have said in your invite, a clear roadmap for businesses or users of water and energy to transition towards sustainable, responsible growth and blah. Now, one of the challenges we all have as management leaders or as business leaders is, how do we, when we talk of a business plan, how do we go to the end of that business plan? If, let's say, 2030 is that benchmark or watershed that we want to accept, how do we look at ourselves and the challenge from that context of 2030 and then come back here to 2023 and say, hey, what are the things I can do? This is one of the things. The other is this. If you look at, for instance, the budget yesterday, look at in just that one paragraph, how many greens, green fuel, green energy, green farming, green mobility, green equipment, green buildings, of course. So, and the government is clearly saying, Modi said that 2 weeks ago in Mumbai, that water security is today greater, as perceived by the government, greater than national security. It takes courage to say something like that. They are seized of what the challenge is, and they are willing to create the ecosystem for it. I've had, enough meetings with people in the administration, at the center. All of them are saying, don't give me platitudes, don't give me lectures. Tell me what I need to be doing. There was somebody from Mahua who said, I have got 800 town planning departments in various districts. What do I give them as a set of bullets that they can implement? Don't give me something that will need uniqueness of solutions. Give me a fix-all, is what he says. Now, to me, it's like this. When you all talk about this disconnect between carbon. For example, the government says we need 1 billion tons as cutback. You ask any of you here, any of your students, to, those guys that you work with, what is 2005's carbon? What is that 0.45 of that 2005's carbon? And what is 2030's, therefore, in absolute terms, not in terms of some percentages? And if there is a percentage, what is this percentage of what? No one is clear, right? And we get 30,000 pages from various institutions. To me, it's like this, very simple in a certain sense, and I'd like to see if how many of you will want to agree with me. If I'm, say, Meena School, and I've got, let us say, 3,000 kids studying there. Let's say I take only 40 liters per capita, LPCD. I'm talking about 100,000 liters that that college is using. That 100,000 liters is 36 million liters if you do some basic math on 365 days. And that 100,000 liters, therefore, if you're able to use that entirely with some very, very simple, very highly economically viable solutions, and Karthik will tell you more about that, it will mean that you spend about 35, probably 40 lakhs, depending on how smart you are on engaging with somebody. And you will have brought a cutback of 600 tons of carbon per year with just this one expedient of utilizing all the water in Meena's school. Why would Meena not do that with her management? Or why would not I do it in my company if I am, let's say, having a water discharge of, say, 200,000? Now do that math on that 100,000 to, let us say, 1 million liters. And there are so many companies which have 1 million liters per day. You're then talking of 35 lakhs, let us say, into 10 as a cost. And if somebody is sitting like Asad in Malaysia to something else, convert that, divide by 80, and you will have the dollar figure on that. And in Kuala Lumpur, I wouldn't know how much you would want to have somebody pay, cost when it comes to such water treatment systems. So you work this out, you will see that your money is coming back in less than 3 years. So I think it was Richa who spoke about, sustainable financing, green financing and all. You wouldn't believe this. In just the last, say, maybe 8 months, I have found at least 35 crores of money going out on about 18 or 19 projects for changing a grade of water to something that is acceptable for use and someone paying for it, in a way that it's a pay-by-use model, and therefore you build something that stretches over, let's say, a renewable 3-year contract or a renewable 5-year contract. And this can be at the tertiary level, it can be at the 4th grade level, like New Water in Singapore. And just now, right here in Bangalore, there is probably 9 projects and about 1 million liters, 1.2 million liters of water, which is getting treated on such a pay-by-use model. Why would you not want to look at, therefore, financing in a way that you set a target for your company of securing this? Like Richard said, no one has the money. The big bad boys are the CFOs. I don't want to engage on this larger conversation of sustainability. I think we have done that for 30 years. And we have got nowhere. I'm saying, take these 4 or 5 solution areas. Somebody has got, say, 40,000 square feet. I can tell you he can produce, that company can produce about 65 to 70,000 units. If you're in Mumbai, you're paying about 12 rupees on a commercial scale. You can get that down to about 8 rupees. Can this be anything more economically viable? Do you need an excuse, therefore, not to do it in your own building? I want to know. You are an apartment, let's say you're 150 flats. You are spending, again, the same 600 liters, and therefore it's 100,000 liters, the same 35 lakhs. You get your money back in 3 years. Tell me one of you who's living in an apartment that you can actually go and implement that solution, and I'll find you the money. Within the next 20 days, I'll find you the money if the financial diligence is met. Why are we talking about all these esoteric things on sustainability at some larger levels of other people who need to do? From Paul Hawken in 1994, who wrote The Ecology of Commerce. Was it Patrick Geddes in 1926 who wrote about the industrial cost of manufacturing anything or pricing it? We have had enough people telling us that we need to be doing. We are not doing. Now, I'll take one more example and I'll stop there. Now, take an example of, let's say, a simple rooftop of 2,000 square meters. That's 30,000 units of your own power. Why would you not get it done? You don't have the money. Not a problem. Call someone. Call someone like me and I will find you the right person who knows how to find you a fund. And you continue to pay what you are paying. If you're paying, say, 12 rupees or 10 rupees, or whatever you're paying, you continue to pay that for a certain period of time. And well, like Meena said, there will be a there will be a transactional element. But she is right. It has to be with people who want to be transformational, who don't want to be transactional, who want to be relational in such things that we do with a shared value on whatever that larger purpose is of sustainability. I don't know about society and impact, Karan. You mentioned that in the beginning. I would say that if we co-create value, it will be to have businesses thrive with a green footprint that is enlarged. And that's what IGBC is doing. That's what we want to seek with this kind of preeminent leadership that IGBC has brought over the last 20 years into every one of the other industry associations. This is what we are seeking to do here. I will leave it there, but I'd like you to know my last sentence, Karan, and the rest of you gentlemen and ladies here. Let us not talk of what the government can do or any of the others. If you guys want to have market-led initiatives with economic efficiency and ecological compatibility, let's work together and build synergies, like Karan says. Over to you, Karan.
Excellent, excellent. Thank you so much, Hariharan. And this is the line I constantly use to also introduce. And of course, I keep trying to change, but it's not the same when many people keep looking at all our videos, and I don't want them hearing exactly the same thing everywhere. But this is the line I say. We need to focus on what is in the room. What is it that we can do, we can take away, and therefore started the challenges that are in the room rather than talking about the world and outside, which is something that we can't control at a larger level. So thank you for reiterating that. I think that fits perfectly with the way we want the conversation to move. How can we come together and find solutions together and collaborate together? So you've given both a solution as well as the opportunity for collaboration, which I hope many will take up, because we want collaboration to happen between us and between the attendees and us as well. So thank you very much for making that. Great. Would someone else like to come in?
Karan, may I pitch in here? Actually, yes. The discussions are going very nice, and then there are some difference of views as well. We have been discussing
That's
about
why it's a discussion.
we have been discussing whether it is transaction or transformational. I just wanted to share this example. Of course, Dr. Hariharan has been leading this initiative for almost last 2 decades. Even from the green building point of view, if you look at initially, the initiatives were more of transactional. Obviously, people were looking at what is that I'm going to get it. When we started working on this green building movement, we started personally realizing, yes, it makes sense for us to work on this green building. So when we started working on this, there were no takers, to be very frank. Some of the companies just want the sake of changing their image. They started adopting the green building. Yes, they did not want them to be looked at differently as a polluting company or not so socially responsible company. They started saying, okay, we wanted to get into the green building, more of image building exercise. Then, having gone for this, they started realizing the economic benefits of going green. They started reducing the energy consumption, they started reducing the water consumption, and it started making business sense for them. Though the investments were about, say, 10 to 15% more compared to a conventional building. So they started seeing benefits because the operational costs started coming down. So there was a payback. And then more and more companies, they started investing in green building. And later on, what had happened, the ecosystem started developing more and more because there is a demand. The product manufacturers, they started responding to this. The service provider, more and more companies, they started investing in green buildings. So it took almost 10 years for us, the government, to realize and then start giving incentive. When we started this in 2001, 2002, the first green building in the country is our own Center of Excellence in Hyderabad. The first incentive, we got it only in 2011 and 12. The government started giving the incentive, saying that, yes, we want the green buildings to be built in the states. And then gradually the green building movement started picking up. And later on, it has become more of a business sense. Today, we have enough evidence to demonstrate that if you don't incorporate the green building concepts by design, if you don't select the products and materials appropriately by design, you are likely to incur more cost. In fact, the green building will cost less. This has led to the kind of transformation. Though the many things with a good intent, it starts with some kind of transaction mode. gradually it leads to the transformation over a period of time. So that is the point I would like to submit to this audience. Thank you.
Hi.
Great. You have really brought it out from the, if you look at the framework, again, we talk about pathways for transformation that lead to an iterative, kind of model, which starts a virtuous cycle, as you rightly said. Yes, it takes time, but it starts with a transaction, but ultimately, change is all about starting maybe with an incremental change, but then moving to a transformational model. So I think that again is really. One more thing, and I'll Percy, I'll just come to you, just 2 more seconds and I'll come to you. I think the other thing which Hariharan said and what you put also in your thing, Karthikeyan, is that capital is not scarce. We feel, we work from a mindset of scarcity, but actually capital is available for the right kind of projects, with the right kind of outcomes that can be demonstrated in advance, be it, right from what Eroshan spoke about, supply chain, inclusive procurement for women. There is capital available. There is inclusive capital available from sources much lower than paying money for bank interest, etc. But most corporates do not understand that. Most corporates do not.
You're absolutely right. Sorry to pitch in here. Karthik, hold your thought, and maybe you want to pitch it after that.
No, Percy is next. Yeah, Percy is next.
Yeah, I know I'm speaking out of turn, but bear with me on this.
No problem. No problem.
This is the 2nd of February. I've got 60 days. I've got about 9.5 crores of money. And I'm saying if anyone has got a solar buyout available in 17 to 25 days, I will do that. Second, somebody comes to me and says, I have 100,000 liters. Meena School is a good example. And says that I don't have this 35, 40 lakhs. Give me a structure where I can pay by use. And I can do that in probably 30, 40 days, right? Before March, right? Now in this year, if I look at the year, like Karen is saying, that capital is not scarce. The structures, some few of us are putting together structures with due diligence backend that is needed of credit rating, capability to pay, and so on. And you're able to do this in a way that you don't have to wait for eternity for the money to come in, for you to execute and install. And we have also built at the back end, IGBC has done a great amount of work on that. He talked about sustainable supply chain. A lot of you spoke about it. Today, there are 5,000 products that have been certified Green Pro from IGBC. Now, so I'm saying to you that in this year, I think I will have about 30 to 35 crores available. And this is small. This is just the beginning. This market is, I believe, in a country which has $3 trillion, I believe this is a $400 to $500 billion market. Over to you back again, Karen, and to Karthik.
Percy, would you like to comment?
Yes, I would. Yeah.
Just to give the context, I think, we're talking about sustainable practices, but you're also using the word inclusive, where the social element has to also kind of come in. And so I think, Percy, I'm looking forward to you bringing in that viewpoint. Go ahead.
Yes, Karen. I'll continue from where Karthik and Dr. Hariharan spoke. So in the healthcare space, we did have very similar challenges where you come up with an alternate model or an innovative model, and they say, "Theek hai, it's not going to work. This is not something that has been tried before, and you're just wasting your time." So, like Gandhiji said, you start with rejection, then you come up after a couple of years, maybe with acceptance. Then came the engagement part. And maybe after 20 years, you get recognition for the alternate model. People can see and believe that it's actually working. And this is a model which is very light. It is what I personally believe is simple solutions for complex challenges and problems, not complex solutions for simple challenges. So we decided that we will use existing capital, human capital, existing surgeons, existing hospitals, existing charitable clinics, and like someone said, there are just, I think Meena said, you just need the skill and you need the dil. So those are two things that we follow, Meena, and it's pretty similar to what you said. So if you have the skill and the dil, the heart to do something for the underprivileged, for the vulnerable sections of society, you are looking at creating an equitable platform. Because all of it, as Karen says, it's all tied up. I personally have no clue which SDG stands where, because I believe it is one big ball and each one of it is connected. If you have no vision, you have no livelihood. You have no livelihood. Your family, your kids don't go to school. You have income issues. You have livelihood issues. You have employment issues. You have healthcare and so on. They are all kind of intertwined. And the other thing that I would like to bring up, Karen, is the role of judiciary. I mean, we need laws that prevent companies from creating wealth out of sickness, creating business models out of sickness. I think those are some of the issues that we seriously need to address. Because this platform allows me to be vocal about it, but there are some giants out there who actually make a lot of money, lots of money, and even issue dividends out of the illnesses of people. So I will stop there and yeah.
Yeah. So maybe
I just want to add.
Yeah, sure. Okay, go ahead, Richa. Okay, fine. Go ahead, Richa. Go ahead.
Yeah, just connected point that Percy mentioned. You spoke about making opportunity out of illness. I mean, not just illness. I will give you an example from elderly care point of view. Now there are many startups who have come in, and because they're going to be like those who are right now in their 40s and 50s will eventually, that age group will going to be much higher another 20 years down the line. It's going to be a big opportunity, and there are startups coming in Bangalore, Mumbai, and Pune who are seeing that and right away, building business models so that, they can get economic benefit, and eventually, obviously, the elderly will get the right kind of home. So what I want to add here, Karen, is just 2 minutes here, that, we see a lot of eco and social entrepreneurs within India's ecosystem also, and Hariharan rightly mentioned, it's a big economic opportunity and they are tapping that. The only thing we need, I think, as of now is get them the right kind of partners within the India Inc. who can support them so that they can do scale up. They are getting investors, so there are impact investment happening. There are Omadiyars of the world who are investing into them so that they can do proof of concepts. But they need the scale so that the India Inc. partners with them. They get the scale. They can become visible. So I think that's something which is definitely if we look inwards, what you also said, Karen, look in the box. There are these things there. There are innovation. The jugaad thing is happening. We need to have the connectors there. So I think that's the space that one need to kind of look at. Sorry, go on. Yeah.
Great. Thank you, Richa, for bringing that in. I think connecting the dots is a very big part, of course, of co-creating value for a ecosystem, systemic level. But before you can connect the dots, I tell you, we need to actually create the dots, because if we don't have enough dots, it's like a child's drawing, right? If you only have 3 or 4 dots, you're not going to be able to make any shape out of it. But if you have 15, 20, that's how trends are created. That's how insights are created, right? And that's so important, again, to ensuring that the value is understood back again into the ecosystem. I just want to maybe ask Eroshan and then Sandeep, I promise to come to you, because I want to close the social and the inclusive place, right? If we are encouraging more and more, or we are expecting rather, that corporates will become more and more inclusive in their way of using their funds for appropriate, requirements, whether it is procurement or whether it is practices, then what is the benefit they're getting back? I mean, how have you seen large corporates? And Eroshan, I know you all work with absolutely the top, corporates in the world, right? Top 500, in fact. How have they benefited because of inclusive capital utilization, and what has been that value creation for them? Can you please come in? Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Karan. It's a good question. So there's a reason actually why these all large corporations are willing to do supply diversity, diversify their supply chain. I mean, most of the people outside of America, we have an impression that, American corporations are getting some incentives from the government so that they are, that is their concept. So they're incentivizing. So that is why they are kind of like continuously promoting. That is wrong. None of the American corporations are getting any benefits or incentives by doing supply, inclusive sourcing. So it is their willingness to give back to the society. And also, they see the value of doing that because they see it is the way of making profit, right? So, if you take about just a women on business, 1/3 of the private businesses in the world are owned by women, right? So, I mean, if they are excluding that women on businesses from their supply chain, already their supply chain is, only targeting about 60% of the population or the suppliers, which is not the right thing to do as a large corporation, right? So that is why they wanted to include the diverse suppliers into their supply chain and giving them opportunities. But many researchers have already proved that these diverse suppliers are very competitive, agile, and they always have very innovative product at a competitive cost, right? Instead of, or maybe opposed to the other general suppliers that normally these corporations are sourcing. So that is why these larger corporations, for an example, like, Intel, Google, IBM, and all these largest players, they have a certain percentage of their procurement going to these diverse suppliers. Can it be women on business, diverse on, veteran on, or any diverse suppliers based on different countries of their operations in. And the other thing is the recent research by the Hacker Group shows that the corporations, like, the large Fortune 500 companies that are seriously implementing this diversity in their supply chain, have increased their profit by 2%, compared to the previous years. So that is a real interest findings. And if you take they also have the report based on the other region. For an example, there's a portion of APAC region, and they see a 0.5% increase of profit in these corporations that are seriously investing on the supplier diversity in this APAC region. So it has a business sense. So that is why they continue to advocate for it and continue to talk about the benefits of diversifying the supply chain and giving opportunity for these diverse people. And a lot of researchers also have proved that, if you put more money into the hands of women on businesses, they always have the ability and willingness to spend back from their community by creating local employment opportunities, giving the social development processes, and supporting for the child education and health and all well-being as such. So that's what the benefits of that.
Great. So I think linking it back to the sustainable piece, I think that is what even Hariharan said, that ultimately there is an internal gain, okay, versus external value creation or external benefits. So if we talk about it from a business case, we are saying there is a real return on investment. We are not just saying SROI, we are saying ROI. And it stops right there, right? Because there is an ROI whether you invest in social good or you invest in sustainable practices. And I think with that, I'm going to bring Sandeep back into the conversation. Sandeep, over to you.
Yeah, thanks, Karan. Basically, all the experts have spoken, and I am trying to put this to people who are the first time or maybe not as erudite in the subject of procurement and supply chain and other things. So I'll just pick up what has been spoken by each of the people here, like Hiroshin. When he's talking about supply diversity mapping, I mean, if people come down to the ground level, and what they do is that they take a 5 to 50 years risk assessment in advance. I mean, you come to know, if you're talking about, let's say you are into textile industry and you know that the area where you stay, there is going to be groundwater depletion or there is going to be a flood, maybe next year. If you know that, or in 5 years in advance, in 1 year you will not be able to do anything, but 5 years in advance, then the board can take a decision what to do. So that is something when you start, knowing this in advance and also getting extreme weather events warning in real time, that would help procure finances easily. It helps insurers and lenders to be more assured that they can put in money in inclusive capital. Meena ji, what she talked about is compliance. Again, so compliance can be shown on the ground by risk impact assessment. You using the remote sensing and trying to attach it with the ESG, which Richa does, in case of infrastructure and construction, and then translate it to a sustainable design. And we talked about chat GTP. I mean, that's become something which is a current rage right now. I mean, you can actually put in a question for your students that why don't you write something on climate change and sustainability, and they would probably learn from that AI and do something better. So yeah, you can do that. Hariharan ji, as always, my guru, he put it on ground. And on ground, when you do climate risk impact assessment, and if you can understand what is an atmospheric risk, what is atmospheric risk? Cyclone. when you're talking about high storms. And if you can come, that you come to know that in month of May 2023, in a week of this month, there is a high risk of cyclone. And you are able to map it and you know what you can do. Your NDRF and others can come in. That is real sustainability. That is where the inclusive capitalism, procurement, even if you're talking about a wedding there, and the hotel would come to know what they need to procure and keep in stock if there is a inclement weather before it happens. So, and you can do that in temperature, geological risks. You can come to know even landslides and flash floods. You can also go for spatial risks. People don't understand that. We all do Surya Namaskar, but one CME can actually devastate. And we know that in 2012, northern India was blacked out for more than about a day, and then in 2009, USA had a blackout, and as recently as November, New Zealand had a blackout because simple electromagnetic waves which are hitting, and there is this which we do not know how to handle. And just imagine if there is an open heart surgery going on somewhere which is remotely being done, and you're not aware that there's an electromagnetic wave that will be disrupting the internet. What will happen? Knowing this beforehand. That is where I'm talking to Percy. If you know that this is what is going to happen, would you be doing an open heart surgery remotely on those very days when you know there is a CME risk? You won't. So that's the beauty which you can bring in. And again, coming down to Meenaji, TCFD is going to be one single framework. All this, the CDP and everything. 2019, there was a roundtable. I've been part of that. TCFD has taken all the commonalities. There are some materiality differences which Richa and others would understand, Hiroshan, but these things are going to be taken care of in another year or two, and they're going to come in. And you're not talking about Karthik. What do you talk about? If you can convince the transaction, the transaction part which you talked about, and when it becomes transformation, is when value can be measured. And by showcasing the case studies, I think there should be more events with Karen, which just takes up case studies. That, hey, look, this is textile, this is a building, this is a thing. And these are the case studies. And here is the people who have earned money or saved money and done this. That is when the people who are listening to us, people who want to understand and learn, they are able to grasp things in real time. And Karen, when you talk about SDGs are all tied together. One of my partners, Dr. Glenn Fomer, is actually an author of writing the Paris Agreement. While I was part of the MIT Climate Curve when we were trying to create that SDGs from the MDGs, which was a pretty confusing 100 targets. But now, when you bring this SDGs together and you look at it, each of them are tied. You can't do good health unless you are talking about water, and unless you're talking about water, you cannot do good water unless you have a clean energy to pump that water downstream. So all of them are tied together, and this is what I wanted to put in ahead, that people who are listening, they can understand it tangibly what we are talking about, because as experts sometimes we forget what we are talking about and we just start bringing down and I like talking to each other, but that's what I wanted to do, to bring it back to others. People can get it and understand better. Thank you so much.
Excellent.
Karen, to your question, can I?
Thank you, and definitely help. Yes, go ahead, please. Go ahead.
Yeah, if I'll respond to your question with the little knowledge that I can bring on this one. Your question is, if there is inclusive capital use, what does the company buying into the idea and the transaction gain from it? I'll take two examples. Actually, it's going on right now in North Bombay somewhere. Somebody has 4,000 square meters, 40,000 square feet approximately of rooftops. This man came to me and said, look, I'm paying about 20 lakh rupees today as my energy bill per month. That's about 2.4 crores for the year. I'm so sorry for those of you who are from outside of the country that I'm talking lakhs and crores. But my flow of thought is easier this way, but I can always translate that for you later. I told him that with your 40,000 square feet, we can generate about 6 lakh rupees worth at 10 rupees per unit, which meant that at the units level of electricity generation and consumption, I think it was Richa or Meena who talked about SDG 12, producing and consuming or prosuming. 1970, Alvin Toffler talks about, in Future Shock, talks about prosumption, right? So here, when I suggested this over a cup of tea somewhere, I think I was sitting in Pune with this man, he said, yes, I will do this. And where have we reached? We are at a point where implementation is going on. There is a cost of about 50 rupees into 400 kWp, that's about 2 crore rupees or 20 million rupees. And this man is going to now get, to answer your question, Karen, he is going to get zero carbon energy produced in his place, SDG 12 fulfilled, of about 60,000 units of his 200,000 units. Now, this 60,000 units actually produced and consumed in his place means that that 4x loss that happens on transmission, distribution, AC/DC losses, etc., which is therefore at 240,000 units of power that somebody has to generate for you to consume in your factory or plant or your college, is now dropped completely for the 60,000 or 240,000 of the 4x. And what does that 240,000 units mean? Take it at 0.8 if you were to take the University of Bath standards. You're talking of, therefore, about 200,000 kgs of carbon or 200 tons of carbon for this small spend of 20 million rupees. And after the transaction ends, I don't know how. See, money has to be respected for what it means. And therefore, the boot will happen 8 years, 10 years. You sit and negotiate, you work out your IRR and spreadsheet. And then you say, sir, by year 9, I'm going to exit. Until then, you're going to pay me so much per unit per month. The second example, go back to that 30 lakh rupees or 35 lakh rupees, let us say, for 100,000 KLD, or 100 KLD, 100,000 liters. And you know what I told you, 36 million liters. And therefore, I am saving on carbon 600 tons for that. Multiply that by 10 if I'm doing 1 million liters, I'm talking 6,000 tons. And you know what kicks in that when you're over 5,000 tons? Carbon credit kicks in thanks to 2015 and Paris Agreement. Today, if I have over 5,000 tons consistently saved as carbon tons over, say, 3 years on my balance sheet, on my SRBR kind of balance sheet, not money balance sheet, I am able to secure about $9. There are costs for this. Let's say net of costs about $7 per ton. And therefore, I got another $42,000 kicking in for simply doing this one act of getting 1 million liters of water reused. I've given you 2 examples of what the companies can benefit upon, Karen. I can give you 3 more, but there is no time here. Over to you.
You know, there is no to get that information from you, post this, because we are going to come up with a report and we are happy to put in any kind of information you'd like to share. Meena has shared one link already in the chat. And if any of you would like to share something for the audience as well, please go ahead and do that, and we will incorporate it into the thing. 2 hours. Everybody tells me 2 hours. It's too long. People don't stay for panels for more than an hour. And did you even realize we've already crossed 1.5 hours? And we are still a lot more that we could have shared if we want to, right? But I do want to kind of start moving towards the close. So the overlap between solutions, innovations, and opportunities for collaboration. And now we can go out of the room, where we can start talking about what is outside the room as well, right? That will help solve problems that are inside the room in terms of what we are looking to do, what we would like to take forward, etc. So please do keep those points coming in. And I want to maybe bring you back a little bit to the framework, because I'm really hoping that this can become a blueprint for us to use effectively in practical terms and not just theoretical, right? So we had spoken about this whole pathways of transformation, and I said it is an iterative virtuous cycle. So when I go back to part 1 of our conversation, which was on policies, okay, and which was on partnerships, I think really we are saying this links back. This is what we mean by the iterative model, the pathways of transformation, that when we put in place the right policies, we attract the right people. When we attract the right people, we get good partners. When we get good partners, we can start looking for inclusive capital. When we look and use that money effectively, we will start creating a community that will protect us and build capacity that will take us much, much ahead and forward. So I'm just kind of, bringing that again into the conversation, so that maybe, Asad, I know you've already spent a lot of time on the model. If you want to bring in some of those things that you feel will help connect the dots for, others, be it corporates, be it academic institutions, be it civil society, or then be it, in terms of government for policies, how are we going to collaborate and use this as a kind of binding model for us to help us go forward? Would love to hear from you, Asad. Go ahead.
Yeah. So very interesting conversation. I got to learn a lot, and I got so many examples related to how to do better with water. From Hariharan and others. So I can maybe diversify the context a little bit, give some other examples. But coming back to the framework, the model that you are talking about. So one thing interestingly that as a model that you do highlight and it's covered is that we're talking about a value-driven approach in a marketplace, in a marketplace bringing in business solutions. So we are trying to look in how this model can probably help where there's intersection of market-based solutions, which is the reality, the practical side of it, and in the process co-create value, right, with the customers, with everybody who's a stakeholder. So as again, before the disclaimer, there is whatever we do, we are still evolving, we are still learning. So there are no silver bullets here. Okay, and all the examples I heard from the previous speakers. So people can always argue, or we can always say that this is like a case by case. It happens. So, which is again not discouraging in the sense that we have to have an eye for that. As I said, we have to have that ecosystem that motivates everyone. That okay, sustainability is again not just about having green points or not about greenwashing, but more of moving towards the way of life. How do we incorporate it inside, and how do we then take it outside? And we really have to believe in that. So, that would be the driving example. Driving motivation. Now, coming back to another example, which probably I can illustrate what I'm trying to say is here, the companies I work with, multinational companies, US-based, working on oil palm, and here there's a small players, which is the lowest of they call it the B40, okay, the small farmer. So when you impose, for example, something like a sustainability standard, which is essentially designed for some companies which are higher up, the richer companies. And then you expect the smaller players also to comply with it. This is just an example. What happens in the name of sustainability, you first call that person, that smaller player. Okay, that one is to take the biggest hit. So because it is not specifically designed. So what is the business case? So one of the things, the recurring themes is, and I would like to validate, and from my side, that there is a very strong business case for sustainability, very strong financial business case, very strong case to use it as a competitive advantage. When Erosha talked about diversifying the suppliers, yes, I mean, especially after COVID and before COVID, world has seen enough to make the supply chains more resilient. I mean, the whole idea that one ship blocking the Suez Canal, that the incident that happened, that's one tiny incident, but it changed everything, the way the world conducted its business. So there are enough examples to realize that we need to diversify supply chain for a business reason more than anything else. So it is not, as you say, that the social part is separate, the economic part is separate. It all goes in together. So we have to come on to that. And to quote the example from my personal experience and project, so we have a company who would want to buy, like carbon offsetting. So they don't want to change the way they do their business, but they want to buy carbon credits, right? And pay somebody else and say, well, we are supporting it. So it took us a while to really convince them that, see, what you're doing, it's a huge investment. These credits are expensive, actually. If you take a fraction of that money and invest it actually in your supply chain, and especially where it's hitting the most, the smaller farmers, smaller players, maybe this is something genuinely you would want to do. And otherwise, I mean, part of it was also to show it to them that, it's like a whack-a-mole. You keep on hitting, reacting, and trying to block. Well, Greenpeace will come from here, and some of us will come from here. And so instead of a reactive approach, if you try to take something which is more genuine, which is more like we're honest on our side, that we are trying to cover and acknowledge that this is not everything we are doing, but at least we're able to stand by it. So that's where I think the ecosystem starts to evolve when we start believing in it. And that was my first point. So coming back to it, there are no silver bullets. Okay. And when I said about the case study, because the case study point brought up, my reference or intention was to use this framework to implement and study how it works where it is good, where it is doesn't work, how we can improve it. I was not referring to case studies that already exist and we teach again and again. So this could be taught, lessons could be learned and then brought back into the class. So that's all. I mean, I can talk more about the framework, but I definitely see there is enough scope to implement it and learn from it. So for now, I saw it for the first time. The way I see it, it's something on paper. I can relate to what I already know and see parts of it that can be applied. But it does talk about a balanced innovation, an inclusive, a holistic approach. We call it a systemic view. You don't look at things in silos, but you look at the whole system. So it makes sense. But again, it's an evolving process. We all are learning.
Absolutely. And thank you so much, Asad. I think, you're absolutely right. And that we need to look at this from how we can implement it. But I believe that we can also look at it a bit from the external portion, from the past, as to how do we map. Yeah, maybe we can try mapping what has happened in the past so that it helps us get better nuances to implement it now for the future. So while maybe we cannot touch everything from the past and put it into this model, definitely can learn from past experiences and past case studies to bring it forward in terms of implementing it and testing it further in that sense. So thank you very much. And I look forward to that, because I think that will be a great opportunity to collaborate. And I hope others also would be interested in doing something like this. And I think, Sandeep, to go back to what you mentioned about case studies, in fact, that was one of the format we did last year at the Rise World Summit. This year we have not had it, but last year we did have case study as one of the formats. And as you all know, we do 20 different formats. Okay, so we have a wide variety of formats. We even had sports one time on people with disability, and we actually had sports where we had both people with and without taking part, just to sensitize people to it, rather than screaming the message that we are not different, etc. So we are always open to any ideas on different kinds of formats that will make the Rise World Summit more interesting. So please definitely suggest them. But thank you very much for reminding me about that. So great. I think we're coming to the end. Unfortunately, it looks like Meena dropped off, and Katin also has not. I hope he's not having tech issues. I was hoping, brilliant, Meena's back. I was just hoping to get Meena in, and she came at the right time. Meena, you're going to live for very long.
Thank you.
Yeah. So Meena, over to you to perhaps maybe talk a little bit more, as I said, towards the closing of what is the role of actors, so that we can create systemic change, as Asad spoke about, and also, of course, encourage more collaboration, transformative collaborations. Yeah.
Yeah. So being in an academic institution, I think we would like to leverage the energy of our students, okay, to work with mentors who are present over here in order to see that how they can create some sort of pilot projects which are there. If you look at Shark Tank India, if you are following, there is a move towards building up the inclusive capital, which will play a very, very important role. I think young people believe what they see. And I may not say all 600 students of mine will have a sustainability DNA, but I believe that at least 10% will be having, and that is good enough for us to start with. So we can, I think, leverage this, and if we can invite more of these mentors to interact with our students, that will play a very, very important role, because they believe what they see. And it's not easy to transform people. I'll be very honest, because in India, the way in which we rear our children at home, in general, is that we are more self-centric, that do it for your marks, do it for, so even NSS will say 10 mark mil jayega, you have to do some community service. That is fundamentally wrong, the way. So I think sustainability driven personalities, or making sustainability as your personal agenda or lifestyle, is something which should start from school, from a very young age, because by the time they come to the higher education institutions or join the corporates, it is very difficult for them to change their perception. Right now, we are doing an MDP for a public sector company where the training department wants us to transform people in 2 days is sustainability. There's no medicine or there's no vaccination for it that you can transform them in 2 days, okay, which is there. It has to flow at every vertical, at every level. And that's what we are trying to do through our We Care Civic Engagement program. We have a 3 weeks program where they work with CSR departments or with NGOs, and they have to come up with some sort of solutions which are there. Come up with this whole thing, at least be aware of what the challenges are and how your job will be at stake if you do not address these challenges. So we start from a very concrete and then take them to abstract. If I start telling them climate change, they won't understand a bit of it. But if I tell them if you do cycling, you will be fit, okay, and you will be very hunky looking fellow, people will accept that because that is something which they relate to. So I think we start from concrete, and as was discussed, that we develop case studies, we develop frameworks, we engage those 10% students who are interested to take it ahead. I think it will be a very feasible plan of action. Thank you.
If I may, Karen, we have only 20 minutes, 19 minutes, as you know. Both of them, Meena and Asad, as academicians and leaders, they started on a very humble note of, Meena said, I'm here to see what I can learn. I'll make two observations, if you don't mind. One, and I'll keep it in less than 60 seconds. I know the pains of an anchor. One is, to you, Asad, you're working on palm cultivation. Typically, for a palm tree, in summer, you need 300 to 350 liters per tree. But if I take the year, you'll need approximately 1 meter of water. And that 1 meter of water, if I were to take 1 hectare, it is 10 million liters. If you have a situation where you're bringing cultivation water efficiency that can halve the cultivation water use, that will mean about 500,000 liters, and I'll cut the math short here, about 3,000 tons of carbon reduction, which can be claimed as a voluntary emission reduction, a VER, and not a CER, because you're a collective of farmers. Offline, I can take this and enable this conversation for you with a couple of other people in India who are leading such carbon credit kind of things with UNFCCC and the AG36 protocol. I'm working on 4 of them just now, right? On how I establish the carbon credit, the carbon reduction first, and then take it through this process of UNFCCC. And to you, Meena, thank you for saying what you said. Students, you have only 600 students, you said. You're talking about experiential learning. And we can take this offline. If you have some X square feet or square meters of rooftops, I can give you a very, very simple model for you to see that your students work on rainwater harvest systems. I'll give you something that will not cost you very much as money, and then they do it. It's not we who do it. The hardware is set up first, the software is enabled, software meaning as training and interact, not even training. It's just about sitting with the kids and talking to them and making them understand the nature of water, how it behaves in a city like yours, and so on. And I can also give you talked about workshops. There's another person called Sampath that I work with, Sampath JM, who's been working in Malaysia too, on vision workshops. How do I infuse this bug of sustainability, shall we say, in youngsters? And those are, say, 3-day workshops, 4-day workshops. I can have someone like him do that. Over to you, Karen.
Great. Thank you. Speakers and experts completely empathize with you as a facilitator. So it makes my job so much more easier. Thank you so much, Ariane. I appreciate it. Yeah. So I think, it's time for us to have last words. And I really would like to start with Richa, perhaps, for us to close with what are these thoughts based on the conversation that we have had already, but also from a way forward. What would you have liked to do? Or what are you taking away from here? And how are you going to use what we have discussed to have some benefits for you as well?
Great. No, thank you, Karen, and thank you, panelists. I think some really great insights coming from academia and practitioners. I think I suggest a way forward could be, getting the practitioners and academia together to work on the models for the students, and what Hariharan rightly said, involving students to develop solutions for the corporates. Corporates also, when we talk to them, when you bring young minds, they are more excited about it. So there are two, three things that they ask for. One is, of course, the peer analysis. So they all want to know what their peer companies are doing. Second, if there's out-of-box solutions that the young minds can bring in. And that's something I think that academia has. So if you have an incubator running, if you have let's say Asad and Dr. Galeria running some sort of an incubator where young minds are working on solutions, I think that's something that the corporates will pick up or lap it up. We have accelerators running on fintech space. We have some accelerators also running on the social tech space. I think DBS is running one accelerator. There's obviously a social alpha run by Tata Trust. But I think more of such accelerators can encourage innovators from the youth themselves while they are studying. I think that's something which one can look at from an industry point of view.
Like I said, just jump in. And who would like to go next? Closing words, brief, 2-3 minutes, please. We just have another 10-15 minutes. 2 hours almost gone. Artikan, do you want to come in? You haven't spoken for a while. I'm sorry, Percy. Go ahead, otherwise. Go ahead, please. You're already unmuted.
Yeah, I think the one thing we all need to understand is that the resources on the planet are finite. They are not infinite. So if we can make the most of them, if we can make the best of them, I think we'll get close to the SDGs.
Great. And remembering the SDGs is important, creating awareness around it. Because, for me, honestly, and at the Rise World Summit, we truly believe it is the most comprehensive landscape of all the issues that are facing the world. Okay, there is no other framework that can be as comprehensive as this. And this is more important, not just from the 17 goals, which are important because it's easier to kind of grasp and hold. But when you start going deeper into the 169 targets, then you really understand the power and the opportunity that also exists for us to tackle these problems. So I think, I would definitely encourage, and thank you, Percy, for highlighting that once again. Karthikeyan, yes, you already.
Thank you, Karan. A lot of learning in these discussions. There are different perspectives, the different way of looking at things. Even though we all agree that yes, sustainability is the way forward. I'm looking at it in two ways. One is certainly there is a need for a lot of awareness creation. This awareness creation is something we feel is missing still. Right, it has to start from the students. Somebody has mentioned this. Yes, there is a need for a lot of working together between the industry and the academia. That is one aspect. The second aspect is, in terms of creating the ecosystem, the network of bringing the people together and then working with a common objective and then gradually building the ecosystem. Once you start doing this, of course, achieving the objectives with respect to this sustainability and inclusiveness with respect to both capital procurement practices, etc., that is possible. Yeah, that is. I feel that is a way forward. Thank you.
Absolutely, strengthening the ecosystem, building capacity, and creating awareness. A prescription for the future, no doubt about it. Okay, yes, Sandeep, go ahead. Yeah, you unmuted already, Sandeep. Go ahead, please. Sandeep, can you hear us?
I think his mic is not working too well. Sandeep, your mic refix. You are an expert at digital things.
Okay, someone else.
While he does that, let me pitch in quickly. Only 2 or 3 sentences. Richard talked about startups in this industry, in this segment. Unfortunately, sustainability has now got to be called an industry. You see, I was at a meeting at IIT, and this is Madras. And there's a guy who comes in, young man, alumnus of that same college or institution. He pitches for about 3 crores for a solution where he says, I will remove arsenic in the Gangetic Basin with some whatever system, treatment plant that he'll put up and produce 1 million liters of arsenic removed water for cultivation. I stopped and asked him, why would you take 3 crores as equity on a startup? Then you can, if that money is given to you, then you can take this and stop all the borewells in that space, in that cluster of villages, work on the watershed, ensure that there is surface water. The moment you have surface water being used and borewells not being used for extraction, there is no arsenic, there is no fluoride, there is no iron. I'm working just now north of Calcutta, about 100 kilometers away. They are using about 67 borewells, 450 feet, down. And I'm telling, and then they have got these arsenic removers in place. I'm saying, first, let's work on this in a way that we go for surface water, harvest it for drinking water, not for other purposes. So I'm seeing startups sometimes, Richa, are coming up with cockeyed ideas. We need to see how we first educate them and see that they become responsible. Unfortunately, even the investors are not too well, shall we say, informed on what they should back and what they should not. Over to you. That's part of this. Rain Reach, there is a program, 40,000 students in Bangalore from poor college, schools. And the same experiential learning they have put up there, Meena, working extremely well. We have 17 volunteers now who go to these schools, spend only Saturdays. I tell them, I don't want money from you. I donate your time. One Saturday, 10 to 1, 3 hours, you give me your time. People are going, spending time with the kids and with the teachers. Kids are delighted. They get rain the last evening. How many, what is their rain gauge shows them 12 mm rainfall. They're able to say, this is the quantum of rain came in. And we have a digital flow meter into the tank, which shows them also, therefore, how much rain came. They tally it. These are kids at 13 years, 14 years. They're smarter than we are. This is what we need to be doing. Over to you, Kiran.
Thank you. Young, catch them young. There's no two ways about that one. Great. Awesome. Who would like to come in next? Closing remark?
Yeah, I think I can come in now. So, very diverse panelists, and I learned quite a lot. And it's very interesting discussion about sustainability, inclusive capital, and how the procurement processes can create a core value in the environment and in the society that we are living in, which is kind of a very interesting topic to continue the discussion forever, actually. My takeaways from this, the way forward is actually there's a lot of needs to and support go into building the capacities of people involved, right? So in terms of building the awareness, in terms of building the capacities of taking these initiatives and how this can be practiced and what are the frameworks available. Nobody is willing to reinvent the wheel, but there are so many existing resources and knowledge available, and those knowledge has to be pulled in, and we have to create a system that those existing materials and the knowledge can be used in a proper way to take these initiatives forward. And in this panel is actually, Richa and Meena and Dr. Hariharan. Your views are really excellent, and that actually set the stone for like how different actors, including corporates, suppliers and students and the small entrepreneurs and large entrepreneurs, has to take to be inclusive and also create an inclusive and system where everyone in the society can benefit, right? So We Connect as an organization, actually, we are taking our initiative to build the capacities of women-owned businesses and the corporations about how to do business together and how we can improve the capacities of those diverse suppliers through the business process. Not only always teaching them about how to improve your standards, how to present better to the corporations and such, but also practicing them and providing them opportunity to grow their business through the procurement. It is not only just sourcing something from me, but it's also how they can develop suppliers over the time period from a $1 million contract up to a $10 million contract, right? So that kind of a development process has to go in, and I think that kind of an awareness and capacity building has to continue to go into that, and we all have to work together. And thanks for the amazing opportunity, Karen, and the panelists. I learned a lot. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Eroshan. I think we need to build capacity on both sides of the equation chain, right? So that is also very, very important. Good. Sandeep, welcome back. Glad to have you.
Am I audible now? Am I audible now?
Yes. Please go ahead.
Yeah.
Please go ahead.
So what I was trying to say is about inclusive capital. To those who are listening, they have to understand what is inclusive capital. It is both wealth and riches. Usually what we understand is the riches. Riches is, I will give you a very simple example. If you put a lakh of rupees, a check in front of me, and the deal is that I have to close my breathing for about 2 minutes. I think after 30 seconds, I would say that I would rather keep my wealth than the riches. So that is the difference which we do not know, and that is the fine balance which we need to create. And understanding that wealth would be great, creating the riches for you, and that is what we are destroying. We are destroying the wealth of this planet for creating the riches. But this balance will what happen when you are doing the procurement practices which are sustainable. So to just clear that headline, that what is
Wonderful,
procurement?
wonderful. Very nice, very nice. Wealth and riches. Great, great. Asad, go ahead.
Yeah. So again, thank you very much. Thank you, everyone. Good learning opportunities, and thanks, Karen, for having me on this. Sandeep, thank you very much for coming back. Percy, Dr. Meena, I know she has probably dropped off. Dr. Hariharan, Karthik, Eroshan. So it was nice connecting with you, and hopefully we'll keep the connection. Now, from my side, so a little bit of self-reflection. What I would say is, so what I hear from people from the industry, and this is not the first time I have felt it before. Yeah, we would like to work with the industry, and academia need to work closer. But there's a problem on the academia side that we are a lot slow, and industry wants things done fast. You have a framework, you want to go apply, see how it works, what doesn't work, come back, take a feedback, go in again. But on the academia side, the KPIs are different. Research takes time. I have to write, have to publish, and that's something that is where the disconnect happens. But at the same time, any framework like this, if it gets validated by the academia, it does help a lot to be a little bit bold with experimenting it. So there is this alignment on the KPIs on the academy and industry, and I wish we could find a way to work better on that side. Now that's on the self-reflection side, but on the industry side, I know on the sustainability, my experience has been, yes, there is an apparent paradox that the businesses are a little bit, they don't find the sustainability business case in trying to embrace sustainability. But from experience, one thing is very clear, that it cannot be retrofitted. There's a much bigger cost if you don't think about it upfront. And I think one of the points that came out earlier was, so you have to design for sustainability upfront in your business, in your value chain, in your supply chain. And once again, even if you feel in the beginning or apparently there is no business case, rather than ignore it, we try to minimize or mitigate the risk by embracing it. And in my experience, those companies which have done that, eventually they are able to make a bigger change and embrace it more appropriately. Okay, so it requires to be a little bit of bold, and a little bit brave up front. Can small businesses do it? Okay, again, it's a work in progress. We'll see. And to Karen and all, for the people who are working on this framework, one thing I can clearly see is you have to bring the customer back. It's an age-old wisdom. You have customer-centered value creation perspective. That's what is needed. You bring the customer back into the focus. You have ethical policies, and it all comes back to you. So you will not lose it, the goods value, and those who come on board will be able to give back to the outside world. So that was a learning for me. Thank you very much.
It was a great way to end the panel and close. I hope everybody got a chance to say if there's anything else. I think we're good. And it's exactly 2 hours. Can you believe it? It's just gone past. I'm sure no one, neither in our audience nor in the panel.
If you want this community, Karen, if you want this community to go ahead and do something well-meaning, people like Asad, Meena, and others who are in academic institutions, others who are in workspaces, office spaces, they have to walk the talk. We can't keep saying, I'm doing research, and the connect of the dot is going to take a lot more time, Asad.
Sure.
Your building, your university, your campus. Can you get to make it net zero water? Karthik will tell you what it means, and net zero energy. And we will help you do that, even if we are sitting 3,000 kilometers from you. Over to you.
Great. Great. Thank you again, once again. I would like to close by inviting all of you to please check out the platform. We still have many more sessions to go. We also have tomorrow the closing plenary, where we are going to have the RISE Awards, the RISE Citizen Awards being handed out. So please do join us. We will be having Ms. Rosa Whitaker from the US, from the Whitaker Group. We'll be having the UNRC from Nigeria, Michael Schumacher joining us. We will also be having Navya Noveli Nanda, and I don't think she needs any introduction, joining us, and Dr. Professor Jagdish Sheth as well from the US, Padma Bhushan awardee from India. So a lot of exciting still there, even though we have about 24 hours to go, but a packed 24 hours. Look forward to you joining us there. In the meantime, thank you very much once again, and have a great day. Bye-bye, everybody. Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you, Karen. Thank you, everyone. Bye.
Bye.
Yeah, thank you, everyone. Thank you, Karen. See you soon.